For advanced writers, of course, I'm going to start by reading and watching and studying the course instructions for the essay itself. It becomes advanced when I come down here to the archetype. I've chosen a character, and I'm going to use Hamlet because it's not on your approved list and I've used it all the way through, so let's just keep with that. Let me say Hamlet is obviously a tragic hero. I mean, he dies in a big way. He's born to noble birth. He's spoiled. He's got all these situations going on. And I'm going to pick from tragic hero for this advanced topic. I'm going to pick two of these characteristics. One of which, of course, is going to be his death. That's what makes the tragic hero the most tragic, is the fact that the hero dies a very public and very serious death. So I'm going to pick one other quality of a tragic hero. But now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say not only is Hamlet a tragic hero, but the cause of his tragedy relates to another archetype as well. Just for the sake of argument, I'm going to say that Hamlet is also a Byronic hero, and that is what leads to his demise. And I'm going to pick two things from this list that Hamlet does. I'm going to say he's self-destructive, and gosh, any one of these other things would apply, but because I kind of in the mood to write this sort of an essay, and I've always empathized so much with poor little Ophelia, who drowns herself because he tells her to just get out of his way, I'm going to go ahead and pick this second one. Now I have four characteristics of this hero that relates to the Byronic hero and the tragic hero. Let's see how I would organize that into an essay. Now let's set up the formula for how I'm going to analyze this essay. I'm going to create a formula and I'm going to use that formula throughout the essay. I've sort of pointed through the introduction and the items that are included in the introduction, which is one paragraph. A general statement about Hamlet. This is what happens to Hamlet, or any character that you've chosen. This is a 1 to 2 sentence statement about, you can imagine that the reader has heard of the character, but has never read the play, or the novel, or whatever you're using. Then this is the thesis statement, and I want to pause here a second and go over this. Hamlet's demise as a tragic hero, so that's our primary archetype, born of noble birth, which is one of those attributes, whose actions are fueled by his Byronic nature, which cause him to, 1, dominate and destroy Ophelia, suffers the mental obsession with the ghost of his father, is a cautionary of an indulged and spoiled child. This means that in my essay, the reader knows that I am going to be describing what exactly a tragic hero is. I'm going to be proving that Hamlet was of noble birth. I'm going to be proving that he suffers from a Byronic nature, and that nature causes him to dominate and destroy his girlfriend Ophelia, while he suffers from a mental obsession with the ghost of his father, and that those attributes form a cautionary tale of an indulged and spoiled child, which I will need to, of course, prove. Next, as always, is a transition to the next section, which is the synopsis. This is going to be 1 or 2 paragraphs. First, you want to explain what happens in the play. This cannot be copied and pasted. This needs to be a combination of cited quotes from the summary as well as your own words. If you copy and paste the synopsis from Spark Notes or Cliff's Notes or whatever, that will show up on the plagiarism report, completely highlighted and shown as plagiarism. And if you say, no, but I went ahead and I cited where it came from, I said it came from Spark Notes, that means that your entire essay relies not on your own thoughts and ideas, but on what you have copied and pasted from another website. So this should be a balance in these 1 to 2 paragraphs. Next is a paragraph that cover the actions that Hamlet takes that prove up here, and this is brief. This is a synopsis. But now we have to show the reader the actions that Hamlet takes that show his 1. Noble birth, 2. Social and sexual dominance over Ophelia, back to our thesis statement, the mental obsession with his father's ghost, back to our thesis statement, where he is spoiled, back to our thesis statement, and his tragic demise. We don't go into big detail here in this section. This is the synopsis. That lets the reader know where I'm going, because again, the reader has heard of Hamlet but never read the play. So that's what happens in this section of 1 to 2 paragraphs. Now, next we move on to, we've got to start proving all of the things that we put up here in this thesis statement. So I organized it where my first thing, I need to tell the reader, what does the reader need to know to understand what I'm saying? First, I'm going to show noble birth. 1 paragraph, maybe 2, and I'm going to make a claim that he's a noble birth. Then I have proof, a quote from the play, and I have a second proof, what an article says about Hamlet as a noble birth. And after I've made those quotes and I've said how that quote therefore proves my claim up here, I transition on to the next point. And that next point is his Byronic nature. Remember, I went at the very beginning where we picked 2 things from each list. So the Byronic nature is going to be separated into 2 or 3 paragraphs. Same thing. First, I start with a definition. What is a Byronic hero? My reader needs to know that. Then, what are 2 things that Hamlet does that are like that? And then proofs, quotes from the play, quotes from articles that have been written, an image or 2 of Hamlet doing those things, how the character's actions prove that he leans toward Byronic archetype behaviors, and moving on to spoiled indulgence. Same thing. First of all, I'm going to start with something that defines what I mean by spoiled indulgent. Next, claim of what Hamlet does. Next, proof with quotes from the play or articles. How do those points even prove that Hamlet is indulged? And perhaps I include an image here. There are some required images. You can pick and choose where to put them. And then transition to the final point, which is his death. Because of these things that he's done, which I've covered in the sections above, now I'm ready to spend 1 paragraph just on all those things result in the tragic death of Hamlet. Quote from a good source about how a tragic hero dies. How does Hamlet die? Proof of that. An image of Hamlet's death scene. And how does that prove that Hamlet is tragic? Do you see how the logic of all of your points have culminated in this point where you say, and therefore, but you don't write the words and therefore, but the logic points to, thus he is a tragic hero. What causes him to be tragic? In part, his Byronic nature. And then the conclusion, and the conclusion is another little brief quoted statement or 2 about the definitions of a tragic and Byronic hero. When you find that article that explains Byronic heroes and tragic heroes, you're going to have that article. You're going to use quotes from that article in 2 places, actually in 3 places. You can use quotes from that article perhaps in the introduction. You'll use quotes from that article in the summary, the section 2 where you're defining your terms, and you're going to save a few little nuggets from that article for the conclusion, for this definition of a tragic and Byronic hero. So you used the same article in several different places. Now we have a new Hamlet image of Hamlet's tragedy. A quick review of additional things that Hamlet does that fit the definitions, because you're going to find a million places where he shows these indulgences, where he is dominant over Ophelia, where he seduces her, where he, all these things. And when you find those, you save them. You're going to have one of those examples for the essay, and you're going to save one for the conclusion. It's really neat when you research that way. And remember that I start a notepad and I have neat things from the article, and I can add those wherever I need them. And then the final thing is your own statement about the character. That can be a quote from the character. It can be something that the character says along with an image. It can be your own observance. But do not say, that's what makes this a great play. This is such a classic honor class. That's not what this essay is about. You aren't writing a review of Hamlet. You aren't writing your personal opinion about the play. You are writing an expository, rhetorical essay, the subject of which is Hamlet as a tragic hero fueled by Byronic archetypal behaviors. And so your conclusion statement should say something about that. Let's look very quickly over at the example that I showed you. Here's that example, and I'm just going to scoot through this because you'll be able to find this and study it as you like. But I'm going to show you right down here at the bottom only to make the point of how to conclude the essay, because it is a temptation to say, and that's what makes this such a great play. That's what makes this, no, that's not what this essay is about. So you can see that this is the last sentence of the essay, and you can see that he ended the essay with an image and with a quote from the essay. You do whatever you like, so long as it does not insult the reader by saying, and therefore this is such a great story. That concludes this tutorial on how to write the advanced hero archetype essay.